Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mickelson, your host, speaking at you from Sunday, November 23rd, 2025, in the space and time continuum. And I got to tell you, this last week, I was just so sick of all this crap that I was considering not doing the podcast this week. I felt like we're all sick of this. We're all sick of talking about it. We're all sick of thinking about it. Let's all just take some time off. You know, even though things are coming to a head and it looks like at any moment this whole regime could topple. In fact, there was more gatherings yesterday, get rid of the regime or something to that effect. I haven't heard about numbers showing up. We'll probably hear about that in the coming days. But everybody's just so sick of this, and I'm so proud that people are staying strong and staying involved. They want to fatigue us. They want to just make us stop thinking about it so that they can go on with their horrible grift and their crumbling of the United States without us noticing. It's really pissing them off that we all are noticing and being informed, staying on it, holding their feet to the fire. You can tell how much it's pissing them off. You can see little spurts of steam coming out of Donald Trump's ears when that one reporter, of course a woman, asks him, why not just release the Epstein files? And he goes, quiet, Piggy. It was not funny. I mean, I can't even make fun of it. It was so gross. Thinking of entitling this episode something to the effect of, Fear Not the Real Piggy. Because Donald Trump is just projecting. And I don't want to insult actual pigs, the animal. They're a very sweet animal. I'm not here to list the animals in niceness. At the top of our chart, the pig. I'm not here to do that. But I don't want to insult the animal, the pig. But Donald Trump is the piggy. So when he calls somebody else the piggy, when he accuses others of sedition and insurrection, it's because he knows he is committing those crimes. Unlawful orders are war crimes. That's a story that you probably did hear about this week, but part of the reason I decided that it was getting a little more fun was because of the G20 summit. This is probably something that you have not heard about. It's a development just from this weekend, and it's pretty hilarious. The G20 summit. If you don't know what that is, it's the top 20 countries economically, some of the most powerful countries trying to have an alliance to try and be in coordination with world matters. So it's the G20, 20 countries. This year it's the G19 because the Donald Trump administration is boycotting it. The reason they're boycotting it is complete BS. Trump says, and he's the only one in the world who thinks that there is a genocide of white people going on in South Africa. It's just absolutely absurd, and it's not anywhere near reality. But that's his excuse. Really, I think his excuse is, I just don't want to think about doing anything anymore. I just want to go golfing. And in fact, he was leaving the White House, yesterday or this morning, saying, I'm going to meet with the great Arnold Palmer, meeting with him about a golf course. I'll remind you about Arnold Palmer, his size of his Johnson, a lot bigger than Mike Johnson's Johnson. Anyway, that's what Donald Trump is actually doing instead of being at the G20 summit or even having a representative at the G20 summit. And the hilarious part is interviews with all of the world leaders. And almost all of them being asked the question, so what is it like having the United States absent this year? Oh man, it's way easier. There's no drama. There's nobody trying to golf and mess up security all around the town. They're not naming names, but there's a certain world leader who's absent. Is it easier with that certain world leader being absent? Oh, fuck yeah. Multiple world leaders talking about how great it is to not have Donald Trump there. Some of them, yes, going ahead and naming him by name. They also came up with, they pretty much already finished their work because it was so easy to do without the twerpy Piggy there. Then what happens? Trump catches wind of it and he's like, "Oh, we need to get somebody there. We're going to get somebody there. Hold on, you guys. Wait. We're going to show up." Don't know the results of that yet. I think they're all just kind of like, we're pretty much done already. We're going home. So your guy can come, but I'm not going to be here anymore. I thought that was pretty hilarious. Another thing that's pretty hilarious is an Elon Musk related thing. So, he named Twitter X now. He changed the name to X because he's an idiot. Why would you rebrand an already very successful thing? Well, I guess maybe because what I do is I take successful things and I tank them. I run them into the ground, and that's what I want to do with Twitter. That's why I bought Twitter, rename it and run it into the ground. Well, he added a feature earlier this week, I guess, or midweek. And it's called About This Account, where you can find out more information about each account. Now, there are a lot of bots and whatever you want to call them, trolls and things on X. A few years ago, I relied on Twitter for most of my information. I got most of my news on Twitter. Now, I pretty much never go on to Twitter, now called X, because of things like this. It's just full of BS. So a lot of right-wing accounts, when you go to the About This Account, which of course a lot of journalists, a lot of investigative people did, they're like, let's go to this far-right account that just spreads BS about our politics, tries to influence our politics, in favor of MAGA and all of these things. So these far-right MAGA accounts, they're based in places like Russia, other Eastern European countries that are basically our adversaries. Unless you're Donald Trump, of course. There's a story I'm going to tell that's another new development at the very end of this week. And it's not hilarious or funny. It's horrible. But it's proving that Donald Trump has been colluding with Russia since the 1980s at least, if not starting in the late 70s. I've told that story before. But this About This Account thing, once then all these stories were coming out, revealing all of these well-followed, popular, supposedly far-right MAGA accounts and finding out that they're based in Russia and other countries overseas. He changed that. He got rid of that feature. And then when everybody started to complain that he got rid of the feature, he put the feature back up, apparently. So all these people are just going back and forth. Yeah. So those couple stories actually amused me, and I thought, okay, this is getting a little fun again, right? It's ironic that when things are really coming to a head, more and more about the Epstein files, another entity came out with another 18,000 emails. Different. I think it has to do with the BBC, possibly. I didn't have time to look into that, but another 18,000 emails for everyone to sift through this week. Another hilarious story. The guy who was the biographer for Prince Andrew, the guy formerly known as Prince, because he's no longer Prince Andrew. Now he's just back to being called Randy Andy. We love to call him Randy Andy. Prince Andrew had a biography written a few years ago, I guess. And in the first printing, the very first printing, which was about 60,000 prints, it included a story about how Melania was the lover of Jeffrey Epstein before she was with Trump. It sounds like basically Jeff Epstein gave Melania to Trump. You know, I got so many of them that when you actually hear Jeffrey Epstein talk, he just kind of sounds like a twerp. He sounds a little, he's kind of nasally and just kind of sounds like a twerp, you know, New York. I'm just from New York. I'm just a twerp. I don't know that that's a good imitation, but yeah, I got plenty of them, Donald. If you want that one, take her. How much does she cost? I'll give it to you for free, Don. I'll give it to you for free. That was a great party you threw for me last week. I'll give it to you for free. Wow, thanks. She's hot. Yeah, somebody new for you to cheat on, right? So that's kind of a funny story. Also, then it popped in my head that this thing with the Epstein files and everybody saying, oh, now that Trump told Pam Bondi to do an investigation on Bill Clinton and some other Democrats, I guess, people are saying, well, now they won't release the Epstein files because of those investigations. But what if they can release? It's like, no, we can't give you any information that we found about Bill Clinton because there's an investigation going on about Bill Clinton in these files. We can give you everything else. Isn't that how it would work? Isn't that how it would work? I think that's how it would work. It's how it should work. So, yeah, those are kind of some of the more entertaining things that kind of got me going again a little bit. Like, okay, yeah, I think I can figure out what to do with the something interesting to talk about that maybe people don't know about that made me decide, yeah, I'm going to do the podcast this week. There is so much more, though. And one of the stories still that you may not have heard much about because it's still kind of breaking, and you can't really rely on mainstream media for them to tell the full story by Sunday morning, but it is getting into the mainstream media, this next story. I haven't heard anything in the mainstream media about the G20 summit, but I saw these interviews. If you go to, like Midas Touch Network on YouTube, you can see coverage of the G20. We'll take a break and I'll come back with this next story because it's kind of a bombshell. In other worlds, it would be the biggest bombshell in history. But of course, it's just one of the bombshells of this week during the Trump era. But I want to tell you that it is making it into the mainstream media. I did see it talked about on some of the Sunday morning shows. Not in their entirety because I don't subject myself to that BS. But I did catch clips, again, being put out by people like Midas Touch Network. If you don't want to watch those shows, there are other places to get the highlights. And I have seen this next story being talked about on mainstream media, which is necessary and very good. Things are changing enough that mainstream media, corporate media, is starting to notice that they have to report on these things. That's really great news. That's part of the big shift that started about 2 to 2.5 weeks ago. But let's take a short break. You're listening to A Satellite View. We'll be right back. We're back on A Satellite View. Find our website, satelliteviewpodcast.com, and find us on YouTube by searching on YouTube for Satellite View Podcast. And then also follow me at Todd Mickelson on Instagram and Blue Sky, and you can go to Twitter, X, if you want to sit through that BS. So the story that I think is an extremely important story because it basically shows Russia has always been true. Of course, you and I know that, as does most of the world. You might have heard something about a peace plan. Now, they were going to ambush Zelensky, President Zelensky of Ukraine. The United States was going to ambush him at a meeting in Turkey. Then what ended up happening was Steve Witkoff, Trump's buddy, who's just a realtor guy who doesn't know what he's doing whatsoever, but Trump has been using him as his Secretary of State and just sidelining Marco Rubio because Marco Rubio just has nothing. He's got nothing going on. Sounds like this Witkoff guy, he's a chucklehead who Trump likes. Well, he ended up not going to that meeting because Zelensky caught wind of this peace plan, quote unquote, 28-point peace plan that the United States wanted him to swallow. It's basically Ukraine, surrender, turn over all of your land, do not grow your army, do not accept any weapons. As a matter of fact, we're going to diminish your army. We're going to make it so that you can't have as large of an army as you do now. Basically, these 28 points that were just nothing but Russia-based. And then later on, it came out that a Republican Senator, Mark Rounds, directly called Marco Rubio in his work on the committee that he works on. And Marco Rubio, he did it at a moment that Marco Rubio did not know what was going on. So he said, what is this plan that I see here? And Rubio's like, what do you mean? What plan? This plan that says this and this and this, it's a 28-point peace agreement? And Rubio said, no, that's not a United States peace agreement. No, we have not signed off on any of that. And Mark Rounds is like, okay, well, the Trump administration is, Witkoff is saying that it is. It's the United States peace plan that they want Ukraine to go along with. So then all of this information gets leaked. So Marco Rubio, to cover for his own ass, publicly says, yes, this is the American peace plan. It was written with Russia and Ukraine. And it's a lie. It was not written. Ukraine had nothing to do with it. It came out then further that there was a meeting in Miami with Witkoff and this Russian oligarch, Dmitriev, who's been working with the Trump administration on these things. Dmitriev had a pre-written, in the Russian language, plan that he handed to Witkoff. Witkoff puts it through Google Translate to make it in English, and there's a lot of evidence to back this up because there are sentences that would never be written in English. If it were written in English, it's just worded weird. You know how when you have to translate, sometimes there just aren't words that can match from the two different languages. Anyway, so this all came out, and now Marco Rubio doesn't know what to do because he's been caught lying, turning two different ways, and it caused Mark Rounds and other senators at another big summit that everybody was gathered at to take the time away from the subject matter of that summit and have to make statements. So all these American senators and congresspeople line up at a podium and they say, we are reinstating the United States support for Ukraine. This is not the United States peace agreement. And Trump, it doesn't seem like he knows. He doesn't care. He's like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. That's our peace agreement. Well, but Zelensky says he doesn't want it. Well, then he can fight to his heart's content, is the actual words Trump said. Then his Secretary of Communications, Caroline Levitt, she says, hey, this president has stopped 8 wars. This is going to be the 9th war. He has changed the Middle East historically and forever. No, he hasn't. There was never a ceasefire because Israel kept killing the children. And now Hamas has said, okay, there's officially no more ceasefire in Gaza. So Trump did nothing. Netanyahu is just trying to stay out of prison. And as long as he kills Palestinians, he thinks he can stay out of prison. So Trump did nothing in the Middle East. He's done nothing anywhere else. And this whole thing is just a bunch of BS. It's just incredible. Trump has been colluding with Russia, since the 70s. Okay, let's move on to some other stories here. First of all, I want to talk about this Mamdani thing. Mamdani is very popular. He won overwhelmingly in New York, the first person to run for mayor of New York who got more than 1 million votes in the history of the universe. The rich people are terrified of that. You can see the rich people trying to call him a jihadist and a communist. Fox News especially, but all of the corporate news media was saying, a big showdown with Mom Donnie and Trump. Showdown, throwdown in the Oval Office. Coming this Friday. And what happens? They have a half an hour or so before any cameras come in. So then the cameras come in. Mom Donnie's standing up because he's a person who is able to stand up. Donald Trump is sitting down because he's not. And Trump is just gushing over Mom Donnie, looking up at him like he's got a crush on him. I know you've seen these stories. And it's hilarious. Fox News had no idea what to do with it. One of the Fox News guys, Kel Mead, came on and said, wow, J.D. Vance must be really jealous. It looks like Trump wants this guy to be his running mate. You know, a lot to dig into there. Trump can't run again, but blah, blah, blah. Mom Donnie knew how to play Trump like a cheap trombone or a cheap banjo or a cheap musical instrument of your choice. And it was just, I thought, hilarious. Right, standing, and Kristen Welker, the host of Meet the Press now, who's almost as bad as Chuck Todd and all the others, she has Mom Donnie on this morning, and she tries like a gotcha question, like, so you have called President Trump a fascist. When you were there right with him, you were asked, hey, you have called President Trump a fascist. Do you still think he's a fascist? And then Donald Trump interrupted. And he said, well, yeah, Donald Trump interrupted, but then after Donald Trump was done interrupting, I said yes. And she goes, so you're saying that you still call Donald Trump a fascist? You still think he's a fascist? And then he says with a smile, he goes, yeah, nothing's changed. Yes. Every word I've said, I mean. I stand behind every word I've said. Donald Trump changed everything he said. Donald Trump was asked, so Elise Stefanik said that Mom Donnie is a jihadist. Mr. Trump, do you think the man standing next to you is a jihadist? And Donald Trump says, no, I think he's a very rational guy. We agree on a lot. So Mom Donnie just went in there and said, well, Mr. President, I think we agree on a lot of things. I want to bring prices down for New York. I want to bring housing prices down. I want to bring energy prices down. Wow, you sound like me. These are things I say. Well, I think we agree on these things, Mr. President. And that's all you got to do. And basically, you know, I'm trying to not say the disgusting things about what people say when then the way Trump started to treat Mom Donnie. Using part of his anatomy as a popsicle, I guess, is some of the things that I have said in the past. That's offensiveless enough, I think. So Mom Donnie had Trump, you know, totally eating out of his candy basket. It's very easy to manipulate this twerpy Piggy. Twerpy Piggy. He is the twerpy Piggy. There were more Ghislaine Maxwell emails, and she's talking about how nice it is in this new facility. It put into my head, I have lived in worse living conditions than she's living in right now. You may have too in parts of your life. I had what was called a garden level apartment. That just really means the dank basement apartment. That you have some windows that are right at grass level, sidewalk level, not so much a garden. It was a really crappy apartment. And it sounds like Ghislaine Maxwell, who has trafficked children, has better living conditions than I have and that you may have as well. And also better living conditions than the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and Donald Trump have for probably parts of their lives as well. 18,000 more emails coming out. People are going through. This is unfolding, and it's going to remain unfolding for a long time to come. It's going to reveal some nastiness, some nasty things. I've talked about that in the past, but I'm just so proud of the survivors, and I'm proud of you for keeping the pressure on this twerpy Piggy. it's Thanksgiving week, so I think that we all need to enjoy our lives and enjoy the people in our families or whoever. I hope you're spending Thanksgiving with people that you enjoy spending Thanksgiving with. I hope you don't have to be with the drunk uncle who loves Donald Trump or anything like that. I'm lucky enough that both Heidi and I on both sides of our families, pretty much we all agree on these types of things. So we're not going to, I enjoy holidays now. There was a time in the past where I didn't, but now I do. Because all the people that I get to see are people that I want to see. And I hope that you have that this week. I'm going to keep an eye on things still, but I think most of the things that are going to be revealed now are going to be helpful instead of terrifying. Now, I was going to do a segment on correlation between the new Ken Burns documentary series, The American Revolution, and now, between the British soldiers and ICE agents, right? So there are still some terrifying, horrible things going on, and you and I need to remain strong for those people who are being affected by those things. So part of staying strong is to take care of yourself. That's not being selfish, it's being smart. The whole thing about when the mask comes down, if the airplane's crashing, you need to put your own mask on before you help your child with their mask. Because if you lose consciousness, you can't help your child anymore. So stay conscious, stay awake, stay rested, stay happy. We're not going to let this twerpy Piggy take away any of our joy. We're not going to let this twerpy Piggy scare us in any way. I'm also very proud of the 6 legislators who put out that video about, if you're a soldier or military personnel, you do not need to abide by an unlawful order by Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump is the one committing war crimes. You don't want to be the one committing war crimes. Then Donald Trump is threatening them with death. He thinks they should be killed. They should be hung. And none of them are scared. They all know he's a twerpy Piggy. This is the week of the Piggy. I will leave you with that. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a good holiday weekend, sincerely. And we will speak at you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mickelson. Go to toddmickelson.com for links and more information.